evening. I'd like to welcome everybody to the Village April 25th Village Board meeting.
It's May 9th.
Oh. And I thought I was doing so good landscaping around my house, but I guess I'm not. So, thank you. At this time, I'd like to ask everybody to please stand for the pledge and then remain standing for a moment of silence for our armed forces serving throughout the world. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, first up tonight, we do have a couple of public hearings. Number one is introductory local law number 3 of 2019. I got that right. Comprehensive plan amendment. Jess, can you please read the notice?
The purpose of introductory local law number 3 of 2019 is to amend the comprehensive plan of the village to promote orderly hotel growth and development in areas away from the hamlet centers of the village and to areas which generally host better infrastructure to support such use. The public notice was printed in the Times Herald Record on April 29, 2019.
Thank you. So I'm going to go right out to the public. Anybody in the second row? Anybody in the third row? Anybody in the fourth row? We should leave directions up there.
All right, I'll remember next time. Thank you. Good evening. My name is Charlie Bazidlo. I'm counsel for Millwood Place, the owners, operators of the Hampton Inn. I take it we're going to talk about each law separately as opposed to combining them together?
That's correct.
Okay, so I'll keep my comments just about the local law number 3, the comp plan. My initial comment, I realize that the board, or I believe the board, has referred the local law both to the town planning board and also to the county Department of Planning. I did not see any response back from either one of those entities on the website, so I don't know if the board has received those or not yet.
We received a response back from the planning board, not from the county.
Okay, so I take it at this point you won't be closing the hearing, or I would hope that the board would not close the hearing on the local law until such time as the public would have a chance to take a look at those comments.
Well, chances are we're going to close the public hearing tonight.
All right, I would just request that you would not at this point in time. I guess then in relationship to that, the seeker analysis that was available online seemed to cover both actions, both the comp plan as well as the hotel overlay. A couple of comments just about that is that part 1 of the EAF that was included in that is not fully completed. Several of the questions on part 1 are left blank at this point in time. Again, I would hope the board would consider the fact that the comp plan itself does affect more than 25 acres of property within the village. As such, the adoption of that would be considered to be a type 1 action. The type 1 actions are more likely to require a full impact statement in the analysis of it. What was available online just seemed to, I think it was called an environmental report. So I don't know where the board is going as far as a seeker determination for the comp plan itself. Again, it would be helpful if the public had a chance to look at the potential seeker determination of the board before you would close the public hearing and cut off the opportunity for comment.
Okay, thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Anybody else in the fourth row? Anybody in the back of the room? Anybody at all? Attorney Newton. The points that were just raised about our seeker documents,
Yes.
do you feel there's any validity to that?
I believe what Mr. Bizzillo is referring to are sections of the FEA.
I don't know if your mic's, oh, okay.
Sorry, I'll come closer. I believe what he's referring to are sections of the FEAF Part 1, and there are blanks in that. That's actually following the directions of the DEC pursuant to their own form. But I think that's what he's referring to.
So it's our position that it's filled out correctly?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, unless, Valerie, you have anything you want to add to that? No, okay. So one more chance. Anybody else would like to say anything? Okay, since there are no further comments, may I have a motion to close the public hearing?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Well, as I said earlier, the 239 review hasn't come back from the county, so we won't be taking any action on this tonight. So we'll move on to the second public hearing. Introductory Local Law 4 of 2019, Hotel Overlay District. Jess, could you please read the notice?
The purpose of introductory local law number 4 of 2019 is to amend chapter 310 zoning of the Code of the Village of Woodbury to 1, maintain the character and scale of the existing village hamlet areas, 2, provide locations for hotel uses in commercial centers and retail complexes that draw customers from a regional market, and 3, to provide locations for hotel development near regional road networks. The public notice was printed in the Times Herald Record on April 29, 2019.
Thank you. Anybody in the second row? Please come up.
Sandy Capriglione. I just had a question about the coverage. I understand that a hotel needs to have the 2 acres, but if there's, say, a 10-acre lot that is in the IB zone that also happens to be in the hotel overlay district, is the whole lot then subject to the 75% coverage?
Do you want to answer that?
So if it's a 10-acre lot and it's in the hotel overlay, theoretically, yes, that would be subject to no more than 75% coverage.
So then, again, if it was the same scenario and they do not build a hotel, then it's subject to the 65%?
That's correct. The underlying code, that's correct.
Okay, so it is the whole lot.
It would be the whole lot if they're going to apply for, like, let's say they were going to build a hotel on the 10 acres and they wanted to apply that overlay zone for the 10 acres for that hotel use.
But what if it's like a commercial center?
Right, so then it would only apply to where the hotel is taking place, because the assumption, the code itself specifically is only referring to hotel uses. So the thought in this is that if you have a 10-acre site and you're gonna come in with a hotel use, that hotel proprietor would have probably subdivide that 10 acres into whatever property that they're planning to use.
So 2 acres then would be subject to the 75% and 8 acres would be subject to the 65%?
Whatever the underlying zone is, that's correct.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else in the second row? Anybody in the third row?
Good evening, Kristen O'Donnell.
You're on.
I will be sliding towards you. Kristen O'Donnell, Lincoln Tully Engineering, representing Woodbury Hospitality Group as a potential hotel developer on Turner Road. And we have specifically, we have concerns with the parking requirement that's proposed, 1.25 spaces per unit. We believe that this is excessive and it will result in additional parking over what will be necessary. Surrounding towns, Warwick, Chester, Goshen, Tuxedo, all have one space per unit. So we have concerns with that, and we're just looking for some rationale there. Otherwise, we think that it's a good law and look forward to an end of the moratorium and look forward to continuing to work with the village in the future.
Thank you.
Would you like to respond to these things or till we're done?
Whatever you prefer.
I'll go whatever you prefer. I'm very flexible.
I can respond to at least the 1.25. 'cause
Okay.
that has come up. We initially, I think a lot of the communities have one parking space per unit plus whatever employees, and so we were trying to simplify that so that it would just be straight. Instead of the additional employees, it would be so many spaces per unit. That being said, if there is documentation that sort of suggests that this region, one space per hotel unit is better or makes more sense for the overall zoning code, then it might make sense for the board to reconsider the 1.25.
Well, let me just ask one thing. So normally, if we didn't have this, you would have one space for the room and one space for every, how many employees?
Two.
Right, well, it depends on the code, but a lot of times it's one space per employee, one space every 2 employees for that hotel.
So it would actually, this is actually reduction in parking.
Not necessarily, it depends on, the tricky part is how do you define an employee, right? So I've seen some hotels put in applications for just only like 10 employees, there's really no definition of what an employee really entails. And so the thought was it would probably be better to make it more streamlined and just have so many spaces per unit. I do know that in other areas outside of this, the Woodbury area, 1.25 is, I guess, appropriate, but, each region has its own particularities.
So, but since we're not requiring spaces for employees.
No, it would be right incorporated.
Yeah, so actually, I think the 1.25 might be right on, but I don't know, we can talk about that another time, but, okay, anybody else in the third row?
Good evening, Steve Esposito, Esposito Associates. First,
Can you make sure you speak into the mic, or
First,
you could take the mic out so you don't have to bend down?
Thank you very much.
We're worried about your back. so.
That's right, thank you. I'd just like to make sure that you received my letter yesterday, just acknowledge that.
Yes, I did.
Okay. And again, I'd just like to, one of the things I'd just like to point out also is the parking requirement, the 1.25 per unit.
You're going to double down on that?
I'm going to double down on
Okay.
that. And I'd just like to offer one of my thoughts or rationale behind it is that, I think the goal of the community is to have some hotel development. You've got the hotel tax, and I think that what you'd like to see more than just a hotel, but a hotel with amenities. And the more you require parking for the rooms, you're going to potentially impact amenities that could be developed within that hotel, i.e. meeting rooms, catering, restaurants, because all of those accessories will still require parking as well. So just a thought.
Do you know the average employees that it would take for a 120-room hotel?
I can send you that information.
So you don't know it offhand?
I do.
Oh, well, then give it to us.
Actually, I don't. But I do have that information available. Because I was going to actually include that with my letter, but I didn't want to.
You didn't want to burden me with all that information.
Information.
Okay.
But if you would, I'm more than happy to send it to the.
Okay,
to the,
thank
to
you.
the board.
Anybody else in the third row? Anybody in the fourth row?
Some of these comments may be repetitive, but I'll put them on the record again. Again, lacking the receipt of the referral from county planning, I would think it would be a good idea to keep the public hearing open on this, so the public would have a chance to take a look at that and be able to offer some advice to the board about it. Specifically about local law number 4, though, and the language of it, there is, if I understand it, there's an exemption in local law number 4 about projects that have received site plan approval but have yet to be constructed. I only know of one project in the village that seems to fit into that, and that's the one on Estrada Road. That exemption seems to go against the language of the comp plan amendment to, if I understand it, the goal there is to not allow hotel developments within a hamlet area. So the exemption language within local law number 4 and the stated goal in the comp plan amendment seem to be in conflict with one another. So I think that's something the board needs to resolve. Perhaps with local law number 4, the seeker analysis, again, definitely would affect more than 25 acres of land within the village. Definitely a type 1 action. Here, I think it easily can be concluded that changing the bulk requirements for hotel development, the way this law would propose, would result in greater environmental impact than what you have right now. This local law would allow for an increase in height from right now, I think 35 feet up to 60 feet, so it would be an additional 2 stories for each hotel. It allows for shared parking with other uses in a multiple use project development, so I think you could have a greater impact in traffic associated with that. And the fact that you're going to end up with larger hotels than what you could have under the existing law right now is going to end up with higher traffic demand, higher water demand, higher sewer demand. I think those are all things that need to be examined in a potential environmental impact statement, maybe even a GEIS, before the law is adopted. And I don't think what you have before the board right now is adequate for those purposes.
Well, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Your client owns what business in Woodbury?
Hampton Inn, it's a hotel.
So he's in a hotel business?
He's in the hotel business.
Right, so, okay.
Okay. But again, you know, I'm giving the comments to the board about the fact that I understand the board seems to want to have this law in effect. But again, you know, it's a requirement that the potential impacts of the law be examined properly before the board would adopt it. So.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Anybody else in the fourth row?
Good evening, Mayor, Queen Inn trustees, John Villapiano, Premium Outlet Partners LP, owner-operator, Woodbury Common. Here to voice our support of the Hotel Overlay District. We do have a few comments and clarifications, more or less holdovers from the letter that we penned to the board on November 16th, 2018. Specific to the design standards, can the consultants or board confirm if a bathroom counts as a room?
Well, does the bathroom count as a room? Are you talking the bathroom in the room or the public bathroom on the floors that may have?
This is specific to a bathroom in the room and the design condition that the hotel units be limited to 2 rooms.
Perhaps that's something we can clarify, but no, the bathroom isn't a separate room. It's like one room would be the room with the bed and the bathroom. And then, you know, it connects, has a connecting door to another room with a bed and a bathroom. That's 2 units that connect, so you cannot have more than 2 room units that connect. Does that make it clear?
No, but I believe that's separately addressed. The design standard says units shall not contain more than 2 rooms, is the first part.
That can be fixed to address with the board.
So, but if you're saying that the bedroom and the bathroom counts as 1 room, and there can be a say, a lounge area, more akin to like a luxury suite or a corner suite.
I think what was meant by that was unit, so
Right.
perhaps the board consider changing the word room to unit. I think it's something.
Right, what we're trying to avoid is like apartment-style dwellings. So in other words, if you have a suite where you have a bedroom, a bathroom, and then you have like a little, reception area where you could have entertain,
Yes.
high-end type people. Yeah, that wouldn't be,
Okay,
Right.
I don't believe that's,
We'll look at
Yeah.
that.
okay,
Okay.
thank you.
yeah.
Also with the design standard, number 4, outdoor public address and music system is employed successfully and throughout Woodbury Common to no detriment to neighboring properties. Hotels located on the Woodbury Common property could presumably tie into the same system. These systems are provided at numerous hotels as amenities to accessory restaurants, outdoor seating, gathering, patio areas. We're just wondering, with the noise regulations in place, why the outdoor public address and music systems would not be permitted with a hotel use.
Well, I think the goal was not to be a nuisance to surrounding properties. That was the goal there. Am I correct in that
Yes,
assumption?
and I believe that was a concern from the board.
Right. So your response to that is,
My response would be that perhaps outdoor music systems, public address systems could be employed such that they're not a nuisance to neighboring properties.
well, that I think we'll take under consideration.
Thank you.
But you're going to have to give us a better explanation of exactly what you're talking about. Are you talking about like elevator music? I mean, are we talking about a concert type style broadcast? I mean, I'm trying to understand what you're. I don't walk around the Commons, so I'm not familiar with what you're explaining to us.
I understand. No, the Commons, we have several speakers throughout the pedestrian promenades that do broadcast music.
Okay.
It's not usually elevator music, but
It is not elevator
top
music.
40 music.
Contemporary, top 40 pop, country, depending on the hits of the day. And then we do have announcements to our customers.
Well, announcements, I understand that.
And it also is used, it is used at times of emergency, could be utilized for, safety and other type of messaging to our customers on property. I would think anything specific to a hotel patio, maybe thinking large scale, if there is a banquet facility and there's a wedding being hosted. Sometimes a cocktail hour would be located outside with some music. So now that may qualify as a special event, require a special event permit. I'm not that familiar with the rest of the code. But as indicated in our letter dating back to November of last year, we feel that there's plenty noise regulation within the code, within New York law, where the village has ample control over music that's being broadcasted to the outside of really any use within the village.
Well, is this something like where we could consider that as long as the music doesn't
Set a limit.
flow off the property? For example, let's take the Commons, since this gentleman's from the Woodbury Commons, that if they have a facility there and they have music, if it's not bothering the surrounding neighbors, I mean, I don't know how the board feels. I mean,
Well, I guess if we could set a limit on how high, because you have in the Commons, the music, because I hear it when we shop. Do you guys have a set limited volume that you guys set it at specifically, or it's just?
I can't answer that question, but I could tell you, you're not hearing that music unless you're within our pedestrian
Right, that's what I
promenade.
mean.
Not even in the parking lot. And the speakers are wholly contained to, you're not hearing them as you're entering the property
But
from
in the hotel?
32. It's,
So you, in the hotel, you mean a separate, like if you have a DJ coming with this big boom box, is that what you mean? A separate outside
Well, I mean, in that,
Aside from yours
in that
fixed
instance,
speakers.
I mean, I think that may even require an outdoor events permit. I'm not familiar, but I mean, that's, so I would consider though, you know, that's a special event, a special case, but routinely, yes, it's very common for hotels to have gathering areas, patios. They could have a fireplace or a fire pit with some seating around for people to enjoy on a cool evening. And they do have some speakers out there. Again, nothing that you would be able to hear unless you're sitting in the immediate environs of the hotel.
Do we have any kind of solution to this?
Well, you have a noise ordinance.
Right, and keep it
Do
to
you
that.
have a noise ordinance? I was trying to pull it up, but I'm unable to do so. I don't recall what the limit is, but typically it's somewhere around 75
BPUs.
at the property line.
Right.
There'd have to be really some way to measure it, to monitor it. I don't know if the building department has the device to do that.
I don't believe they do, but, I mean, the concern with the music was that not to be a nuisance to surrounding neighbors. So, I mean, I don't have a problem with what you're describing as long as, you know, it doesn't cause problems for surrounding areas. And,
Take a look at what your
Right.
existing code says and let you know and see if that.
well, I've been at events at Falkirk, and I know they do have some outdoor speakers and music. So I think it can be done, and I'm not sure exactly how we monitor that, but that's something we'll consider, you know.
Yeah, first of all, I'm in favor of it just from a safety point of view. I would think you would have to have the whole system tied in to the rest of the commons. So if there was some type of event, the world's crazy now, and you needed to get information out to everyone that could be impacted by that event, I would think having some type of continuing music, I wouldn't want testing to go on all the time. At least you know the system's working and you can tap into it and then bang out that information pretty urgently. So I think in this particular situation, you know, where you have potentially the largest number of people we might have in any one area in our community, that might be important.
No, I'm not saying it's not. I'm just saying I don't even have a problem with the music. I'm just not sure how we handle this, you know.
Well, why don't we take a look at we'll look at the noise ordinance, and we'll also look at some language to suggest to the board to consider.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Few more comments, specific to the schedule attachment. There's a list of accessory uses, which are fairly detailed. There were a couple specific uses that we outlined in our letter, which aren't addressed in this list. Common to many hotels, full-service hotels these days, there are service-oriented uses such as a spa facility, such as a rental
I
car.
thought we addressed bars.
No, I think the local law that we have here specifically tailored towards limited use hotels as opposed to expanded use hotels.
And the accessory uses that are listed,
You gotta pull it.
accessory uses that are listed, there's a number 6, which says other facilities approved by the Board of Trustees. And that was one issue that had come up and was in your report from the planning board.
Right.
But it does allow for additional accessory uses, it's just they need permission for those uses.
Right. And we'll discuss that later, whether we should let the planning board handle that or not. So there is supposedly other uses that are available, but they have to be, originally the law states that they have to be approved by the village board. But as somebody wanted to know, one of the things the planning board was interested in having is that was left up to them to be able to approve that. So that's something we will definitely address.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was, again, it's just, it was a question at where it was going, so.
Is spa the only thing you're talking about? Because I think spas are on that list.
Well, there, I mean, dry cleaning facilities.
I think, do we?
Yeah,
We do not have those listed.
Yeah. But wouldn't that be part of laundry? You know, wouldn't we consider that? You know, when they, like you go into a hotel, a lot of times when I traveled on business, I'd give them clothes, they'd clean
Right,
them.
well, a lot of times the hotels don't have dry cleaning service actually on site. They actually ship it out to
Oh.
the local dry cleaners.
So you would have dry cleaning on site?
It would be, I mean, at the discretion of the hotel operator.
Right.
So, I mean, another use would be a rental car facility. But again, these are just things that I've seen in my travels at a full service. But if it's left to the discretion, if it's open-ended, whether it be the board, whether it be the planning board.
Well, who's the car company that delivers the car? Enterprise. Well, they're in Monroe. What's the problem?
I think you're right on.
So, and then I guess, in closing, I would say the building height that is proposed, the lesser of 5 stories or 60 feet, we would be in favor of that. If there was any consideration of the board where that would decrease, I would first urge the board not to consider any change to that. I would also ask that if there was any decrease, that perhaps there's consideration of taking the height measurement from the elevation of the adjacent highway where the property is accessed. But that is all I have.
Okay, thank you. That was
Thank you.
quite a bit. Anybody else in the fourth row? Anybody in the back? Anybody at all? All right. Since there are no further comments, I'm going to defer to our attorney about closing this hearing. I feel we should close it. I don't know if you feel that it would be in the best interest of,
It's really a board decision. If you think that you're not going to receive any additional comments that are really greater than what you've received tonight, you have the ability to close it. If you want to leave it open for some reason,
well, I leave it to the pleasure of the board. What do you want to do? Because, my experience is when you leave if you leave a public hearing over, we're just going to hear the same things. I know he's interested in hearing what the planning board has to say, but that was really a referral to the planning board for our benefit, not necessarily for the public's benefit. But anyway, I'm going to ask for a motion then to close the public hearing.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Again, we haven't received the 239 review back from the county, so we will not be taking any action on this law tonight. I do want to thank everybody for their comments. We will discuss these and talk about them, and I thought they were good comments, and they're worth considering. And Valerie, do we want to just review before we wrap this up as far as the public hearings tonight on the planning board letter?
Sure.
The planning board, as part of our code, we sent it to them for their review. They took a look at the law with their consultants and responded to us back in a letter. I think they had like 7 or 8 recommendations, and some of them we will consider, and some of them we won't. But anyway, Valerie, do you want to just go over them and kind of respond to each issue that the planning board brought up?
Sure, and
Thank you.
I'll read each one verbatim, so that way it's there. The first is dealing with local law number 3. It specifically says, the board expressed general agreement with the terms of the local law. The reference to Woodbury Common should be changed to Woodbury Common Premium Outlets. And I don't have any comment one way or the other on it, it's fine.
That's, we all know what you mean.
The second, then the planning board provided comments on local law number 4. The first comment was in the schedule of the zoning district regulations, the planning board questioned whether the Board of Trustees wants approval authority for accessory uses. So I think we discussed that, you just discussed that earlier, and I took a look at that, and I think it really could go either way. It's really at the discretion of the village board.
Well, let's hold it right there a minute.
Okay.
So, what do you guys think? This is basically, we would be deflecting this to the planning board and letting them make the decision on it. Or, the way it's set up right now, they would have to come to the village board and get our okay on it. So, I don't know how you feel.
I love our system. I think we should go to the planning board.
Okay?
What'd you say? Say that again?
I think it should go to the planning board.
I'm okay with that as well.
Jesus? Okay, we can change that to go to the planning board. So you can go complain to them.
The second comment on local law number 4, it said the planning board noted that the Transit Village zoning district permits hotels, which is not intended to change. The board, on advice from its planning consultant, recommends you review the provisions in this proposed hotel overlay zoning district and the Transit Village zoning district for compatibility with such items as height and other design and bulk standards. Do you need a comment on that?
Well, and your response was?
Yeah, so my response was that the hotel overlay district and the, what they're calling Transit Village zoning district were not compared because they're two different zoning districts in different locations with different development goals associated with them.
Yeah, and I agree with that, by the way, because, by the way, the total zoning for the Transit Village isn't in concrete. It's very flexible right now, and I know they're going to be coming back to us asking for some changes. So they are two different zones, and all our zones have different, requirements in them. So that's not really that unusual.
And they don't the hotel overlay that is being proposed does not affect the Transit Village
No.
at all. So.
Right. Okay.
Okay, the third bullet is the planning board recommends permissible food preparation devices such as amenities within a hotel to be specifically listed and limited to coffee machines, mini refrigerators, and microwaves, with all kitchen-type devices prohibited. This is intended to meet the goals of avoiding long-term occupancy. Would you like me to respond?
Yeah. No.
Okay, so, yes, I think that the planning board has the same goal as the village board. We specifically identified items that were not permissible, but identifying a few that are permissible, I think would be fine.
Okay. Everybody good with that?
Yeah, and I would just add, instead of refrigerator, I would just make it mini fridges.
Mini fridge.
Not a cooler?
No.
No.
It's not the 1970s,
Just
Mike.
checking. Because I always go with a cooler.
Yeah, styrofoam coolers now.
Okay, so the second, the fourth bullet states, the board carefully considered the proposed height restriction of 5 stories or 60 feet. The board was unable to come to a consensus on this, with 3 board members believing the height restriction should match the Transit Village zoning district, allowing no more than 4 stories, and 1 board member agreeing with 5 stories as drafted in the law.
Well, we kind of already touched on
Right,
that.
I don't have
Different
any
zoning.
comment on that one.
Okay.
Okay. The next bullet, the board recommends that the northerly hotel zoning district limit line be moved south of Turner Road. This is intended to maintain the character of Woodbury and limit visibility of these tall structures from the hamlet center of Central Valley.
You want to respond?
Well, yes, why don't you start with the discussion on that?
Okay. We feel that it should stay at Turner Road because that is kind of the beginning of the quasi-commercial area going south. There was one concern about the height of that hotel in that area, but due to bulk regulations and things like that, they probably wouldn't be able to go any higher than 4 stories, most likely, because of the parking space requirements and things like that. So we don't seem to be too concerned about that, but the planning board, and you want to elaborate on that, the planning board does have some discretion in the height.
Yeah, so I mentioned to the mayor that, the heights proposed are maximum heights, so there is certain discretion that the planning board can look at when a particular development is proposed, and, that aligns with the seeker regulations, and see what kind of impacts that particular height might have on a hotel and the surrounding area. So that is something that the planning board would have discretion. It's not an automatic 5 stories, 60 feet, it's a maximum.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. The next bullet, the board considered the proposed coverage requirement of 75% in the hotel overlay, noting that the primary underlying zone of IB sets at 65%, and the transit village sets this limit to 60%. The board was unable to come to consensus on this, with 3 board members believing 65% was appropriate and 1 board member agreeing with 75%. Oh, and then there was another comment. Additionally, all board members felt the proposed hotel overlay coverage limit could lead to confusion when multiple uses are located on a property, which is the case with most pending hotel applications.
We kind of already addressed that
Yes.
with the joint public comment.
Yes.
Yeah, I think the coverage is fine the way it is, and it's covered in the different zones. And you explained it very eloquently when one of the public, I should say Sandy, who's a member of the planning board, had a question about that, and it was addressed.
Okay.
Okay?
The next bullet is, it is recommended under Section E, Design Standards, the language in subsection 2 for guest sleeping rooms be revised to say guest sleeping rooms shall not be used as dwellings for transient, non-transient tenants instead of the word apartments. And I believe that's fine.
And we can change that to dwelling, as you noted in your notes.
Yep.
The other thing was,
There was one more bullet.
oh, I'm sorry.
Okay. The last is code consistency. It was recommended that the following items have apparent conflicts with the draft hotel overlay to be considered in the law be modified to avoid conflict, and that directly dealt with Section 310-12B for yards fronting on a state or highway, that any building with a yard fronting on a state or highway or occupancy shall have such yard unoccupied and open to the sky of not less than 50 feet in depth. And then Section 310-40, no off-street parking shall be permitted within any front yard in any district. Because right now, the hotel overlay district does allow parking being permitted in the setback areas. And I took a look at both, and the local law that's being proposed does not refer to the other sections that the planning board raises, so that there is no inherent conflict. However, we do refer to Section 310 in the zoning code dealing with parking for accessory uses, and so we would suggest that we further refine it to state that Section 310-40A, Section 5, and 310-40B, and 310-40C. But because it's an overlay, then what we're proposing for the requirements becomes more or less in effect, and we're not referring to the other regulations within that zoning code.
Okay, thank you. So I think one issue that came up that we could discuss really quick tonight was the parking. And I personally feel 1.25 is good, being that we're not requiring parking for employees. But I am flexible in that, in the fact that I think that's why I want to know how many employees like a 120-room hotel would have, because I think you have to have some kind of parking for employees, has to be considered. I mean, I would think, because if you have a 120-room hotel and you have a restaurant and you have spas and things like that, I mean, I think you can't, you got to have some parking for employees. So having one space per room, I don't know if that's going to cut it. But I mean, I would be okay with having one space per room, plus having, 12 parking spaces for employees or something along those lines.
Well, one suggestion could be that we could go back to your traffic consultant and just ask them their opinion. I think the issue, yes, you do need to include for employees. I think the issue is whether the hotels are at maximum occupancy,
Right.
on an average night, and also because there's a lot of bus service services to this particular area, it seems like that also diminishes sometimes the parking demand. That being said, it might be best if if it's all right with you, I can reach out to your traffic consultant and just see what their thoughts are on the matter.
Okay, I'm good with that. I mean, I think there just has to be some spaces for employees. I mean, I don't know the number. I'm not an expert, but I know some of them are going to be driving cars. That I
Right,
know.
right.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Is there anything else anybody else would like to touch on?
Well, it's a different topic, but on the parking, I mean, quite honestly, one of my biggest problems with the Commons is that there's no parking for employees. So I look at a hotel, you're gonna have people there and working. It's a big factor, and we don't want them spilling out into the neighborhoods, and we don't want it to be a safety issue. That's my biggest problem with no parking, because then you have to find some other way, and it's not always a good way, where you might end up parking, for the employee, that is. So it's a big concern of mine.
Okay, thank you. So, do you feel we basically covered everything, or are we missing something?
More comments?
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I got nothing else.
No, well,
I
I agree
can't-
with Tom about the parking for employees, especially in the Commons. And now you're at a hotel, you're gonna have more employees, because my son, my daughter, and my other daughter worked there. And when there was a holiday special, they had to go all the way to Harriman, get bussed in. So now you got buses going back and forth because they wanted the space open for the shoppers and stuff. Now you got a hotel added there. You're gonna need, I think, spaces for them to just come to work and not have that extra traffic going back and forth on also 32 and within the Commons entering and exiting. So I also agree with the need for space.
Okay. Andrew, got anything?
Yeah, I would say that the Commons, in general, the Commons employees are probably more the teenage variety,
Especially
where the hotel is probably going to have adults who are driving in, for sure, and parking for the day. Whereas with the Commons, where I have a problem with them not having any parking there, when they're parking at the school or whatnot, those kids are walking across 32. And/or their parents are dropping them off. So I agree, there's got to be some allocation in here for employee parking. I'm assuming that the bulk of the parking for employees is going to be during the day, where you have hotel cleaners, bellhops, general manager or hotel manager, building engineer, handyman, so on and so forth, that'll are actually going to drive there and park there. So I definitely think that it's apples and oranges between the two. So.
Okay, thank you. So what do you think?
I think we'll reach out to your traffic consultant. We'll get his input on that. As you know, he was already consulted on these laws.
Right.
Right.
It's an environmental report. So we'll talk to him. We'll see what he says and definitely let him know the concerns for safety and things like that. Obviously, Woodbury Common is the one we're talking about, but as you noted, it refers to any hotel that's constructed in that area.
Well, I'm only talking about it basically because we're at 1.25, and, you know, some people recommend that we drop it down to 1,
Right.
which, you know, that may be something we should do, but I still think we have to have some allowance
Yes.
for employee parking. Anything else?
Just the noise, we will look at what the village has for noise ordinance, and we'll get back to you.
And the dwelling,
Yes, and we'll provide any suggested changes to the local law via memo.
okay. So I think we're done then.
Okay,
Okay.
great, thank you.
I don't know if you want to stay, but we're going to wrap up, but I guess you can go. We can give you a couple minutes to,
No, we'll stay.
you're going to stay? Really? I don't want anybody to leave. We're going to wrap up this meeting now, so now we'll move along to administrative business. Motion to accept the minutes from our meeting held April 25th, 2019. Did I get that right?
If you got it right, I'll make that motion.
Okay.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Jess, can you please read abstract 23?
Abstract 23 contains vouchers 18-2114 through 18-2182 and totals $197,666.74.
Thank you. Motion to approve abstract 23?
I'll make that.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Jess, can you please read the 2019-2020 holiday schedule?
Holiday schedule as follows: July 4th, Independence Day, July 5th, floating holiday, September 2nd, Labor Day, October 14th, Columbus Day, November 11th, Veterans Day, November 28th, Thanksgiving, November 29th, day after Thanksgiving, December 25th, Christmas Day, January 1st, New Year's Day, January 20th, Martin Luther King Day, February 18th, President's Day, and May 25th, Memorial Day.
Thank you. Motion to approve the 2019-2020 holiday schedule.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion to close the escrow account D490 Journey Church and return the remainder of the money in the account to the applicant. The application was before the planning board. It has been completed and all consultant fees have been paid.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Old business, none. New business, extra item. Authorize mayor to hire an appraiser. Jess, can you please read the resolution?
Whereas within the Village of Woodbury, New York, there comes from time to time the need to protect the health, safety, and welfare of village residents by the condemnation of land for public purposes. And whereas the village has a documented need for the protection, preservation, and acquisition of water supplies and resources, as well as the need for open space for village uses, including passive recreational uses, as well as to protect the environment in the village. And whereas previously the Village Board of Trustees directed that contact be made with the estate of Ruth J. Neiman concerning the acquisition of all property owned by the late Ruth J. Neiman at around 415 Route 32, Central Valley, New York. That was or now part of her estate, which properly is situated within the village of, and within Orange County, New York. And whereas the village board previously directed that the estate representatives be contacted to discuss the acquisition of the property by means of an independent appraisal jointly agreed by the village and the estate to enable a fair market value voluntarily purchased by the village of Woodbury, and despite considerable prior efforts by the village to obtain that independent and mutually agreeable fair market valuation, the estate representatives have not agreed to do so. And whereas the public purpose for the acquisition of the property remains as important as ever, and the village board needs to take action since the aforesaid voluntary efforts of the village to acquire the property have not been responded to by the estate. And whereas the resolution by the village board does not preclude any efforts by the village board to voluntarily acquire the property, if the estate representatives so wish to proceed with the village in that regard. Now therefore it is resolved by the village board as follows. Number 1, all whereas paragraphs are hereby incorporated herein by reference as though set forth in full herein. Number 2, the village board hereby directs its special counsel, Dennis E.A. Lynch, as counsel to his White Plains, New York law office to undertake all proceedings required by the New York State eminent domain procedure law for the village to acquire the property, including but not limited to inspection of the property pursuant to EDPL Section 302, with the appraiser as selected by the village mayor, and therefore after the conduct of a public hearing as set forth in the EDPL Section 201, as well as the extending of an offer pursuant to the EDPL Section 303. The village at all times shall comply with all the provisions of the EDPL, including the recognition of its policy per EDPL Section 301. Number 3, the village mayor is hereby authorized to execute all documents or other papers necessary to carry out the provisions of the resolution and to direct the special counsel on the timing for completion of all EDPL requirements. Number 4, this resolution shall take effect immediately.
Thank you. Motion to adopt the resolution?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
We'll do a roll call on that just to be safe.
Trustee Giacomazza, how do you vote?
Aye.
Trustee Gomez?
Aye.
Trustee Flood?
He's got some voice, don't he? Aye.
Mayor Queenan?
Yes.
Just want to make fun of me, that's.
Okay. That concludes our business for this evening, so we're going to go out to public comment right now. Anybody in the second row would like to make a statement of some sort or another? You guys can. No, I don't want to.
Sandy Leone again. I'll ask you to please ask your counsel, or, and Valerie. I just wanted to
Clarify, yeah.
clarify the parking and the setback. So it's staying the way,
Yeah.
okay. And that, again, going back to the coverage and how we're looking at a lot, this hypothetical 10-acre lot, if the hotel is at the back of the lot, the setbacks, the 50-foot setback would be within that 2 acres, not property in front of it.
Yes, that's correct. It's supposed to, the overlay would specifically only relate to the hotel property.
Okay, so Kelly, then, when a parcel comes before the planning board like that, we're actually looking at 2 separate lots.
Well, they're still going to be the same lot,
Right, but theoretically, because they'll have different,
but you'll have to analyze it, if this is the way it's proceeding, you'll have to analyze it as if 2 acres were specifically designated for the hotel.
okay.
They would have to delineate
Right, I mean,
where
like,
the hotel, right?
if somebody owns, I guess a hotel developer could come into the community and say, I want to develop one hotel on 10 acres.
Right, I could see conference
And if they
center,
do
park,
that,
whatever.
if they do that, then they have a minimum of having to have the hotel setback at least 50 feet from the property line.
And
but-
there's no parking in that setback.
No, there could be parking in that setback.
Oh, for the hotel, correct, okay,
Right, for the hotel.
right.
So, but if you're looking at a 10-acre site, and even if you're going to put a hotel within that 10-acre site, you should be able to easily get, your buffers, your 50-foot setback, and to fit within that site. It's 10 acres.
Okay,
I think there's a lot of what-if scenarios, and if there's something that doesn't fit, they still have the avenue of going to the zoning board of appeals for a zoning variance. I think the objective was to look at what's potentially more realistic, which is probably a 2-acre lot. You don't have too many 10-acre lots within the hotel overlay that are completely green, green fields that are looking to just have one hotel on it.
right. But, I mean, the other night, when the planning board was discussing this, I think there was some confusion as to if a hotel goes on such a lot, does the entire lot become subject to the overlay?
Well, technically, if the hotel bought the whole 10 acres and there's nothing on, the hotel.
No, I'm talking about a mixed use.
Right, so if it's a mixed use, what I've seen so far in almost all of the hotels that exist here, that the property owners of the hotel actually owns a piece of that larger commercial district. Now, is it possible that at some point in time you might have a hotel that comes in that says they want to lease the property? I mean, I can talk to Kelly and we can take a look at it, but so far I haven't seen any situation like that here.
Okay.
I think one example that maybe if we put an example down, it may explain it a little bit better, is the one that's across the street from Woodbury Common, that Shops at Woodbury.
Right.
Is an example where they are proposing a hotel as well as a commercial center. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the confusion is that if that's, say, 10 acres, how are you going to separate the 2 acres from the 10 acres? And then where does the commercial centers in the front of that, then the parking cannot be in the setback because the hotel's in the back, and then it would only be for that 2 acres.
That's,
Wouldn't you have to
Correct.
delineate what 2 acres the hotel's going to go
Right,
on?
so
Yeah.
again, theoretically, and we'll take a look at this, just, since we're taking a look at a few other things, but
Right.
theoretically, the thought would be that the hotel developer would own a portion of that hotel center, as opposed to just leasing it, because most of the hotels that I have seen, and then also that are located here, actually have, they have easements to access ingress and egress the shopping center, but they actually own the hotel property.
Right.
I just don't want to see us get into a situation where the hotel owns 2 acres, but those 2 acres, one is in the front and one is in the back, so now you can,
Well, we probably need some language in there to tighten that up.
We'll take a look at that, yes.
okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else in the second row? Anybody in the third row? Anybody in the fourth row? Anybody at all? Okay, with that, I'm going to ask for board member comment. I'm going to start with Valerie. She's part of the board tonight.
Thank you very much for having me here today.
Oh, you're welcome.
I don't really have any other comments.
Kelly? Andrew?
I got nothing.
Oh. Wow. Jesus?
I'm
I can
good.
create something if
No,
you like.
actually, you're better off with having nothing.
I'm good.
You're good?
Thank you.
You don't want to talk for a while?
No, I'm okay.
Tom?
If Marlon Brando here is fine, I'm fine.
Okay.
So, thanks.
Jess, you got anything? Okay, just a reminder that our regular scheduled meeting for May 23rd has been rescheduled for May 29th. The reason for that is our fiscal year ends May 31st, and we're trying to get as many bills in as possible to pay them in this fiscal year. So our next meeting will be May 29th right here. Anyway, thank you and good night, and now I'm going to ask for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
I just wanted to hear him say it.
Yeah. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you and good night.